just to play devil's advocate a little bit here, one of the interesting kind of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the word that I want to use to describe it, but one of the interesting kind of loopholes to this whole situation that I've always found is I've done a lot of work in Puerto Rico. And the Young Republicans, in fact, have a very strong group of Puerto Ricans, some of which now even live in the United States. And I've always said to them, you know, it's funny, you guys can come up and visit us in New Hampshire. You can't vote for president down in Puerto Rico, but you can come up here, stay in a hotel room, have the intent to stay here, and then all of a sudden vote for president, which you can't even do in your own territory, which seems completely ridiculous to me. I mean, it's always like kind of blows their mind, blows my mind, and even a number of them even live now in the States. So some of them live in DC, some of them live in Massachusetts, and now they're voting for president, which they couldn't even do on their own island.
Yeah, it kind of goes back, now we're back to the bigger the government, the deader the Bambi kind of deal, which you'll have to read the Post to get the joke.
I'd have to say it's a difficult, you talked about playing on their chessboard, which we talk about a lot, because that's what we do. They set the chessboard up, they control the pieces, we're just playing on their board. With regard to the Free Staters bringing all those people in as an example.
That would be fun.
You're talking about...
It really would. 15,000 of them, come on in.
Go to one district and just totally annihilate them, and I'll guarantee you the laws will change immediately.
The minute they're out of office.
We needed 38 votes to take David Souter's house and make it into a constitutional
Yes,
park.
That's right. 38 votes that said they, after David Souter said that you didn't have a right to your own property, in the Kelo decision, they made a very rapid move to seize U.S. Supreme Court Judge David Souter's house under the same rules, and they fell 38 votes short of succeeding. And they would have succeeded, but there was some undermining going on there. That's a different story, but back to my point. If you're talking about dealing with the people on the chessboard, none of their pieces have that, aren't burdened by that morality. If it's a morality of the moment, if it's, you know, the good and evil, it's all subjective. It's very difficult to remain in your groove. You know, if you're a moral, decent person, you have the angel and the devil, and you understand right from wrong, you don't want to play in that garden. You don't want to play on that chessboard. And we run into that a lot, where people challenge us from our side because we get down in the dirt with them, and we take Alinsky's rules and we apply it to them, and we ridicule them, and we ridicule them, and we attack them, and we challenge them, and we don't back down. And Republicans are like, you can't do that, you can't be like them. Like, somebody's got to do that, because that's the only way you're going to, I mean, you're bringing a knife to a gunfight, and you're going to lose. So, ideally, you want to fix the law, and you want people in power who will enforce the law, and you want a mechanism for sharing what's really going on with everybody else, so that they see what's going on. If the AG's not enforcing the law, and the Secretary of State's not enforcing the law, and there's obviously voter fraud, then all we can really do is keep talking about the voter fraud and showing them examples and telling them about these people and putting their names in the public and trying to control search and do whatever we can to make people in New Hampshire, everyday voters, go, oh look, there's another one, came from DC and voted New Hampshire and left. Look, there's another one. And that's how we have to do it.
And we want to show that our folks are coming here and staying. And, you know, let's do the Free State Surge thing, and let's try and do a timed surge for one of these election years, and have people come here and maybe stay with neighbors, but have them obviously out looking for property, have their names on lists.
Mike, you have a big house.
Yeah.
It does.
50 or 60 people in
You could open a Martha's Motel. We could call it Mike's Motel.
I'd be happy to put a large marquee in the backyard for election day. We could, especially if the folks had real intent of staying, I'd be happy to help them in their search for accommodation.
If you work for the town of Bedford, you could actually probably register voters in your yard. You know, because we could get that lady to come down. She went to the dump and was signing up voter registrants at the dump. Okay, you could do that at your house.
Well, you know, we had about...
She didn't get charged. It's clearly legal.
We had about 500 out of 5,000 out-of-town voters in Hollis last time, and it clearly made a difference. Jim Luther would still be a state senator if we hadn't had...
Everybody had about 10%. Merrimack had 10% same-day registration.
All over the state. See, 10% same day.
Peggy LePew got a little extra help getting her seat back.
You know, this is interesting. We could almost do it like a fundraiser, like a walkathon. Like if the Libertarians come in and get that state senator, then everybody will commit a certain level of dollars that they're going to donate to keep those Free Staters here.
I don't know. Will the Democrats prosecute us for vote buying at that point?
Oh.
Well, we have plenty of evidence that they did it.
That's true.
Is that really buying a vote? Just helping them move here?
No, I don't think so.
No, because
They'll stay.
OFA staffers, they come up here, they're paid. The coordinators, they come up, they vote, they leave. They get
It's a
money
bonus.
from their money doesn't even come from here. It comes from elsewhere.
Just like Xandra Rice Hawkins.
Right. She's this is beauty. We didn't really get a chance to talk about this. Xandra Rice Hawkins. Oh my God.
Granite State Congress.
She gets her money, a lot of her money for her local establishment of the national group Progress Now. Comes from Minnesota and places outside New Hampshire. So she's funded by out-of-state money. And then she's walking around complaining about
Outside money.
outside money, right? All the time. And then there's four, I think they still only have 4 Republican campaign people who came here, some of whom actually tried to stay here and looked for work here and tried to find homes here, who voted here. In contrast to the number of people
The horde.
the horde of progressives whom we've been outing. So out-of-state money, funding her argument about out-of-state voters against out-of-state voters who are funded by out-of-state money.
I think maybe we'll draw a slightly politically incorrect link between Democrats and some of their political positions. Why do Democrats take the side of Arabs in the Middle East? Because they're Bedouins. They move around, camp for a while, leave behind some camel dung, and move on.
Well, they
that's
conquer,
sort of like,
conquer and pillage too.
yeah, that's sort of like the computer consultant joke. How's a computer consultant like a seagull? Flies in, drops a load, flies away. Anyway, we can keep this strain up quite a bit, and we're not going to. But I will say one thing, and I think Steve...
And in the next half hour, our guest will be Dave Hurst.
But those of you who are listening to the program, and those of you who read Granite Grok, when you see some of these names that Steve's been doing the yeoman's work, I got to get back on this and put a couple more names up myself.
That's exhausting.
Oh, you have so much fun doing it.
I do. I confess that I do. It is. And we do it for free, ladies and gentlemen, so feel free to donate to support our equipment costs at the very least.
Yeah, but even better, go to Google, put in Granite Grok, and put in one of these guys' names. Because one of the things that Steve mentions is that we want to drive the process by which when somebody else types in this name, they're going to come to the Granite Grok page, listing why that they have been voting without really being a state resident. So we urge you to do it. 20 times should be enough each. And that will help us. And it's actually happening with some...
This works because Mr. Wachowski called Mr. Nail and said, please stop. Because he went back to South Dakota and he couldn't get a job in politics anywhere.
Yeah.
Because nobody's going to hire somebody who's even been accused of vote fraud. Because the minute anybody looks them up, a challenger, looks up your campaign manager's name and sees stole signs, voted illegally in New Hampshire, they're going to be like, free press against your opponent.
The funny thing about this, though, is that, in a sense, he actually used this experience and got a job in Ohio, being head of voter targeting. So his job actually in Ohio was targeting specific votes that the Democrats could use and turn out to help them win elections.
Well, he knows how to do that.
So when you get to that level where you're saying, is this just one person making a decision, or is this a coordinated effort? It looks more and more like, the more I research it, that this is a coordinated effort. And the concern is what if people start going into towns and say the Democrat Party says, okay, let's go and check every single person who's died. Let's check the obituaries, and then we'll go into the town and we'll match up and see if these people are still on the rolls. Now we know we have somebody that we can vote in each of those towns. They bring in 1,000 people out of state. Say there's 500 people on the rolls in each of these towns, who have died and passed away. They know that they're not going to vote. They can just show up at various voting locations.
And they're going to be bigger towns.
Turn their 1,000 votes into
Manchester,
50,000
Nashville, Merrimack, places with 25, 30, 40, 50,000 people in them. We don't have any towns bigger than that. Most of our towns have a couple hundred, couple thousand people in them. Everybody knows everybody. But these are towns where that many votes changes a state senate seat. It changes an executive council seat. Maybe it changes a governor's race seat. It probably tips some local elections and awards for House seats. So you have an opportunity to pad your advantage in the legislature by bringing in even just the college students. You don't even have to use the obituaries, but it does get done.
I noticed, I ran as a local official in the last last election, and there was a big turnout then too. And I'm beginning to wonder, maybe I should go back and take a look at those same day registrations, because I looked at the numbers all up and down, for a budget committee. I went, they just don't look right. They really don't. So yeah, you're right, Steve. It can throw a local election.
And some of this I do want to separate from one thing that the Democrats did, which probably makes it look like there was even more voter fraud than there was, is they did an excellent job marketing to voters who were not on the rolls yet.
Yes.
So whereas we as the Republican Party, we only know that you're a voter if you've already voted, the Democrats actually target you before you're a registered voter. And basically they go out and they buy, market available data, and then they target you and say, hey, you're available, you can vote in the upcoming election, what issues are important to you? Oh yeah, the Republicans want to take away your health care. The Republicans want to take away this. The Republicans want to raise the cost of your student tuitions and the cost of your student loan. All these various things, and drive these people out to vote. And so a lot of these young people are out voting because they're the only person whose message to them is the Democrat Party. So that's another area where the Republicans do need to get much better at messaging to this group of people, so that when you see these long lines of young people showing up to vote, Republicans don't need to worry as much because they know that we've been messaging them as well.
Yeah, and so what does the NHGOP do? Instead of going in and starting to do some of this data analysis and assembling a couple cubes of data and saying we can go after and do the same data mining, what do? Oh, we need a new website that'll help us to better communicate with the outside world. It's like, yeah, that works really well.
Well, we have Andrew.
We have Andrew, and we have David. These guys are working together. They are in cahoots in the best possible way to develop the data mining tools and to train campaign operatives in using them.
What a fantastic conservative free market notion that somebody who's not tied to an establishment goes out of their way to come up with a tool that would allow their belief system to be successful in the political arena.
And you know what? If the Republican Party won't use it, maybe the Conservative Party will.
Well, I think that there are a lot of people certainly up my way. I mean, I've already said it. I make very few decisions as the co-founder of Granite Rock. I pick good people to write for me, smart people, and I say self-directed team, and that's the way it goes. But I've made the executive order. We will be helping the New Hampshire Republican Leadership Institute, your organization, along with Andrew Hemingway. And I got a bunch of people up my way who are just waiting to start Q&A in this stuff, because they're all going to run, and this is the kind of tool that we need to run. But Steve,
hey,
the music.
It's the second segment of GrokTALK has come to a conclusion. Monster Trucks Radio Voice. I love doing that.
Yes, he's had too much caffeine today.
I have. My coffee's gone. I'm underwater. The rest of the show could be different. So, Steve McDonald, I'm here with Skip, Mike, Dave, Bob. We'll be right back with the next segment.
Oh man! And by the way, I got this off of Twitchy, but just look at that for news. Excuse me, why would you want to hire that guy? You were talking about hiring inappropriate campaign operatives. The nominally Conservative Party of the UK has hired Obama aide Jim Messina to advise them on election strategy.
Well, who do we have on the right that could help them out?
None of them. They're all on the Obama team anyway.
Oh man, it doesn't get. Sometimes it doesn't get any better, and then you look at see how things are, and you go, "Can it get any worse?"
Yeah, it can. Limbaugh was on Greta this week saying, we really have to take the Republican Party on from the inside and convert it, because third party is going to be worse. I don't think it is. We can't reform this damned organization.
We've been talking about taking over the party from the inside for a long time, and we've been trying to do that.
We've tried. We put up
We're
Jack.
getting closer.
They threw him out. We put up Cliff. They stomped on him. We put up Andrew, and I think they stole the election, but never mind.
Well, when we were sitting there doing the count, and they wouldn't even let us take a look at who was counting or what the vote was. Yeah, so we basically just stood there, and whatever they told us the number was.
Well, it's a secret ballot. Didn't they tell you that?
Yeah.
Next time we ought to just bring in these everywhere and just put them up.
Mm-hmm.
And we need somebody on the rules committee that will make sure that that can be done. Or everybody just go up and hold your phones.
But with 30 votes, I mean, 16 votes is all they had to flip, so.
Yeah, but still. But you know, I'll be honest with you, I keep thinking, you listen to Rush, you listen to Mark Levin, you listen to Sarah Palin, why do I want to keep supporting the... Oops, here we go.
Okay. It was off by like 5 seconds. Well, I added that new New Hampshire Little Wanderings in, and it's like 5 or 6 seconds shorter than the previous thing I had in there. So. Pretty easy to say it's news and opinion you could only get from GrokTALK.com, because it is news and opinion you could only get from GrokTALK.com, because we are GrokTALK.com. You are listening to GrokTALK, coming to you from Concord, New Hampshire, in the CNHT studios, and we have a nice full room. Skip's with us, Mike, and we have Bob Burns, and we also have David Hurst, and everybody's got their mics up. Let's go.
GrokTALK, a production of New Hampshire's leading conservative and libertarian blog site, GrokTALK.com. I just thought I'd add that in.
That's true. That's who we are.
Between the break, I was about to say, you know, if you listen to Mark Levin, if you listen to Rush Limbaugh, if you listen to Sarah Palin, they're all asking the same question. Why do we keep supporting a Republican Party that seemingly doesn't support our values as conservatives or conservatives with libertarian leanings?
Codependency.
And he was saying on Greta this week that, you know, they've turned on people like Ted Cruz because those are the ones that stand on principle. You know, they actually asked him who he liked and admired amongst the Republicans. The first two out of his mouth were Ted Cruz and Sarah Palin. And he had a lot of others, but basically he supports the ones who stand on principle.
And the word that he used is the word that I think we got from Grokster Susan Olson. And she has said this over and over again, and I think we're starting to adopt it as our watchword as well. Fearless. We need people who are fearless, even within the party, to stand up to those who say, oh, we have a platform, we have a philosophy, and then they go off and do something other than that. And we're seeing that in D.C. with the quote-unquote illegal immigration amnesty act. We see them giving up on I think the last chance we have to be the Alamo and stop Obamacare with the defunding. And they're basically laying down and just being sheepdog, not even sheepdog, dachshunds for the Democrat Party.
One of the things that the Democrats do is they intimidate effectively in advance. I need a couple seconds to get this thought out. So that people don't engage in politics. They make everything toxic and hostile, so that everybody's afraid to step a little foot on it. You know, the whole thing with Zimmerman, pick a topic, anything, you know.
Social Security.
Right. So in New Hampshire, and I'm going to ask you guys this because you're involved in the party from the Young Republican, there has been in the establishment end of things, the people who've been in the party a long time, the professionals, the people whose turn it is, those kinds of folks. They've created, I think, the same environment where other Republicans are afraid to speak out because they know they won't get backed up by the party. You agree?
I got one last thing to follow on from the fearless piece. I am beginning to think that our Republican senator is not so fearless. She has stood up and made principled stands on a few things, mostly when the winds are blowing the right way. She is signed on as a co-sponsor of Ted Cruz's bill to defund Obamacare, which is guaranteed not to pass in the Senate, but she signed on anyway. She not merely didn't sign, she withdrew her signature from Mike Lee's letter urging resolve amongst Republicans to simply vote down or not allow to come to closure any funding bill which contained any funds whatsoever for Obamacare. That's the Alamo. And Mike Lee and Ted Cruz playing tag team here. The principle stands to sign on for both. Our senator signed on for the one least likely to succeed, thereby showing lack of principle.
maybe what we should do is resurrect the T-shirts from the 1980s, the No Fear ones. We'll just rebrand them for the conservative.
Now that was before my time in really in politics. Describe, and do you?
No, it had nothing to do with politics. They were very popular at the time. The Big Dog T-shirts, the No Fear T-shirts,
yes.
the ones that you could put your hand on. They would change different colors, and there were all these 13-year-olds running around with T-shirts that said "No Fear." I was thinking maybe we could rebrand them for the conservatives within our party. No Fear.
We could use them for the social media militia if we ever put that up and running.
So
It's true.
to comment on what you were asking about this kind of establishment, it's funny because Dave and I have had this conversation about the establishment multiple times. It's kind of an ever-changing thing. As a kid, I probably would have considered myself or my family part of the establishment. When I ran for office, I wasn't considered part of the establishment. Not exactly sure why. I was a lifelong Republican, unlike my opponents. So it's something that kind of like progressively changes over time and is different from year to year. I mean, I think that all of us could argue at one time our current state party chair considered the establishment.
Yeah, or even you go back even farther, Ronald Reagan, who now is considered kind of the establishment of the Republican Party, was not establishment when he was running. He was considered extremist.
I think he's an establishment of the conservative wing of the Republican Party. His redeeming quality, other than his actual ability to be a great speaker and to motivate people, was to remain being Ronald Reagan all the way through the process. With a few hitches here and there to try to push the window back, Overton's window back his direction. He pretty much came out the same guy he was, whereas we see a lot of people who go to D.C. and end up in the swamp and they get Georgetown flu and they become like Jennifer Horn, who started out as a Tea Party candidate, but somehow along the way became more inclined to hang out with the people whom we've always called the establishment Republicans in New Hampshire, the people with the money, the people who benefit the most from the first in the nation primary, the people who make the phone calls and know everybody in D.C. and can make things happen or not happen.
Well, and there's always this kind of tension, I think, in politics because I think most people get into politics for the right reasons. They believe that they're getting in to change things, and then they realize, hey, I need a certain amount of power in order to get this done, and they start buying and selling their values in order to try and acquire power. And so it's always this kind of tension. How do you stay true to yourself? How do you stay true to your principles and acquire the power that you can to actually make a change?
Well, I'm seeing this, though, is that it's a model that can be broken. Because if you look at the three amigos, and I'll admit, I'm none too happy with Marco Rubio right now because of amnesty for illegal aliens. But if you look at Ted Cruz and you look at Mike Lee, they've gone out, they've basically pulled an Obama who just copied what Ronald Reagan did. They've gone around the establishment, and they've created themselves their own little power base outside of D.C., and they feed off of that instead of just, basically, they're a combination of James O'Keefe and Andrew Breitbart in the Senate, is really what it comes down to, because they are fearless, to bring back that word. They are not afraid to speak their mind. They don't worry about the ramifications of their principles, and they're the ones that are making the agenda right now, forcing everybody else to either clamp down, and they know that they're going to get clamped down, and they do it anyways, but the people back home, whether it's from their states, Texas, or somewhere else, are looking at these guys and going, there's a little bit of truth there. Maybe, like in our case, we need to be talking to somebody who's not so fearless, Kelly Ayotte, saying, why aren't you following this? You're the lawyer. You're the attorney general. Why? It goes back to somewhat what we were talking about before. When elected officials aren't doing the right things, we talked about it in voter fraud, but you look in D.C. with what Obama is doing. There is a responsibility under the Constitution that says, if, as part of the checks and balances, if the president is not following and faithfully executing the laws, it should be and is the responsibility of Congress to act as that check, and what they have is the power of the purse to say, don't do this. We're seeing time after time after time after time, Obama flagrantly, he and his agency heads, writing and doing whatever they want, regardless of what the authorizing legislation duly passed by Congress, signed by the executive, They're making it up as they're going along. Folks, it's going to destroy the republic here.
It's bad enough, the legislation is bad enough as it's written.
Yeah.
And what they're finding out is it is so badly written, aside from all the Secretary shall and Secretary may make up whatever she wants as she goes along, there are plenty of pieces where it just doesn't work, and Obama is simply saying, oh, well, we'll fudge around that, but the steam train must keep on rolling. It's going to roll right over you, and anything that stops it, I'm just going to waive or adjust on the fly. I'm writing the laws here, guys, is what he's saying, and that's impeachable. And what I don't understand is why there's no Democrats of conscience that are willing to stand up and say the same thing.
I think stuff has gotten so partisan, they're not, but when you've only got a handful of Republicans, and even Dr. Coburn, you talked about getting the Potomac flu and going to D.C. and losing their focus. He was a firebrand just like them, and over the past few years, he's turned into the establishment, where he's saying, no, we have to find a better way to get rid of Obamacare. Well, I haven't heard one yet, other than, well, when we take the House, when we take the Senate, and we take the presidency, yeah, like that's going to happen next time, and by then it's too late. No,
without standing on principle, they're not going to attract the voters that are going to get them to there. Meanwhile, the guy who called himself, or was called Dr. No by the liberal press, is now, as you say, maybe not quite Trent Lott yet.
Dr. Maybe.
Yeah, he's not quite Trent Lott yet, but he's getting there.
Yeah, so, we three gray-hairs here, you guys are the young Republicans. What do you see from your standpoint? Or are we just totally off to lunch and out in the Atlantic someplace?
No, I think that what we're seeing is, and maybe sometimes I even hate the word the establishment. I think when you say drink the Potomac water and all these other words, there's an immense amount of peer pressure, and people always feel the need to go along. And also parties are cyclical. Right now, I think that we do see where the GOP has turned into the big tent party, where we do see more people who are more of the independent-minded coming out and being celebrated, whereas those who in the Democrat Party who even are independent, I mean, we throw them under the bus. And as much as, I think that Carol Shea Porter is a moonbat, I mean, this week she was taking Obama to task over Obamacare. And she is one of those people, but they kind of put her at the back of the bus. She's very few, she's quieted, she's ultra-liberal, she's ultra-extremist, and they kind of say, well, that's the way Carol is. But, one of the differences that I do see in the Democrat Party versus the Republican Party is after the primary is done, and those people who weren't necessarily their establishment, they still all come out and help them. They get together as a big party and a big group, and they work together. Whereas one of the biggest problems I've seen in the Republican Party is if you are quote-unquote independent-minded or against the establishment during the primary, it's like you're out on your own. Like you're at the back of the bus, you're out in a little cage by yourself and say, oh, he's just too much for us. He's the reason that we're losing elections, which is funny, by the way. Charlie Bass lost his election. I'm just saying.
And that really is about the establishment is really not just the establishment of Republicans. It's the government class.
Yeah.
It's the people who become Mr. Maybe or Dr. Maybe. It's that infection that I know there's peer pressure in D.C. Everybody there exists to keep the government as large as possible because that's how they all make their living. The lobbyists make their living that way. The staffers make their living that way. The media makes their living that way. The bigger the pie is, even though it's the same pie cut into more pieces, the bigger it is, the more money for them, the more press for them, the more prestige for them, the more microphones for them, the more cameras for them. And we're human beings, and we've talked about so often how people are so flawed and how easily they fall. And that's where you go to fall. I mean, you don't say, okay, go to purgatory, okay, and keep all your values and good luck with that. Nobody's going to support you.
It's like all politicians have an expiration date on them.
Mm-hmm.
They're only good up to a certain period. So
it's about 1 year, which makes Senate terms particularly tricky.
Yes.
So term limits is probably a good way to solve some of this, but there's certainly people who
that might be the best argument for term limits because I'm not normally.
I see that argument made, but I still say eternal vigilance. If we don't have an educated populace that are willing to keep pressuring these people, more than just us pressuring these people, the whole of their electorate has to pressure them. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. They'll never get voted out.
Well, and we bring up just the politicians, and Steve brought up an interesting point, but the lobbyists as well. It was interesting during my election, in the general election, I was running against probably what would have considered one of the most liberal candidates ever to run in New Hampshire. We're talking about a guy when he was in the State House got a 100% rating by the AFL-CIO, only with two other Democrats, including Raymond Buckley. And we're talking, there were AFL-CIO members that didn't get a 100% rating from the AFL-CIO. But it was interesting enough, he got the endorsement from the NFIB. And I'll tell you, it was a kick in the gut every time a Tea Party, libertarian-esque type Republican candidate talked about how wonderful it was that they got the endorsement from the NFIB in New Hampshire. And the NFIB lobbyist here essentially just sold his vote away, or his endorsement away, because he is a lobbyist, and that's what lobbyist lawyers do. And they are completely susceptible to just essentially trying to buy or to be bought off themselves.
Unfortunately, we all complain. And one thing I will say is that even as a confirmed
Analyze.
I complain. I kvetch. As an established Tea Partier, because Granite Rock was a co-founding member of the New Hampshire Tea Party Coalition.
Bob was actually the original founder. He founded the New Hampshire Tea Party in 1995.
I think it was 1993.
Oh, okay.
Actually, in high school, he had a jean jacket with a Gadsden flag on it. So
okay.
You could just be walking down the hall anytime you hear Bob yelling at one of his teachers about something.
Before his time.
Yes.
Our Da Vinci. Okay.
But
I've relaxed a little bit since then.
But
now you yell at your kids' teachers with good reason.
But I will maintain.
They're
I think.
oh crap! Here comes Bob.
Okay, I can see we're losing control.
Proceed.
But I will agree with the Occupy.
Lighter moments.
I know.
Many ingredients make the soup. You know.
I've had to grow up 2 ADHD kids, and I try to ride herd over an ADHD bunch of bloggers. So patience is something I've learned. Like squirrels.
Wind up squirrels. Thanks to Mike. Did we
but anyway,
your train of thought? No.
Yeah, no, not this time. But I agree with the occupiers. The worst thing is that we see the crony capitalism in D.C. and in the case of the elections and all that. The government is seen as a prize to be won versus something that manages stuff so that we citizens can live our lives. And the bigger the government gets, the more lobbyists there are, because the pie does get bigger. And I've always wondered about the dichotomy, because the Democrats always operate as if the economic pie never gets any bigger. Yet their whole idea is to grow the government pie, which that's where they're feeding at the trough in the first place. We disagreed because the occupiers wanted laws and more laws and more laws by government, which would mean expanding government to squeeze down the crony capitalism, not understanding that they would actually be bringing it larger. We, as conservatives, want to shrink that government so that there's less possibility of that, and we don't have to haul out the gigawatt flashlights to look into the dark corners.
Right. I'm actually reading, or should I say listening to Kevin Williamson's excellent book, Politically Incorrect Guide to Socialism. And in it,
that's a great book.
In it, he makes the point, which, by the way, was made by Marx and Engels and others, which is that capitalism is a necessary stage in order to get to socialism, in order to get to communism. Why? Because socialism grows out of capitalism. Or put another way, as you said about dividing the pie, if you don't have the engine of prosperity to generate the revenues, the massive government can't exist. So socialism is, by definition, a parasite. And eventually you run out of other people's money, as Mrs. Thatcher said, and the whole thing will collapse, which is a thing they could never understand. They thought they could go through these stages to get to their communist utopia, and they can't. It simply doesn't work.
Yeah, Stalin even said that imperialism is the highest form of capitalism, because you said that you basically needed the capitalists to generate that capital, just as you just said, Mike, to grow that size of a government so the government can come over and take over.
And now we have the absolute end game of the blue social model, i.e. the socialist Democrats. Just look at Detroit. And California's not behind, and so is Chicago and Illinois as well.
Detroit, folks.
You know,
You got to post that up.
I did.
Oh, good.
And by the way, the Washington Fever, I blew it up for the camera. That is Harry Reid whispering in John Boehner's ear, and John Boehner seems to be happy with what he's hearing. With that kind of negotiation, is it any wonder we have no principles?
Yes.
good thing he's not crying.
Yeah, we sent Frank into Congress from the Tea Party saying, we will be as pikemen, we will watch your six, we will watch your back, but make sure that you stay on the path that you have promised and campaigned upon, because the pikes that are pointing outward from your backside, we will completely flip around and point them at your backside if you slip. And look what happened to Frank Ginta for not keeping his campaign
I think his
principles.
backside got punctured.
Yeah, and that took less than 2
Perforated
years.
might be the right word.
And I was going to ask you, Skip, when he first got to Congress, he honored us with a regular missive called Frankly Speaking, which we posted for him, and where he fed back to the residents in New Hampshire what he was doing
His press secretary was sending us stuff.
for conservatism. But it didn't last long, did it?
No, I stopped. Because the whole thing for me, as a Tea Party,
Frankly.
yeah, and we worked really hard in the primary for him and in the general election, and I felt betrayed that he made the promises. You're sending me to stop the spending. So what happens at the first continuing resolution? And it raised the debt ceiling, which allowed more government. He did not appear, and I keep saying over and over again, within the 50 stalwart names that said no. He had a second chance at the apple. Did I find his name among the 57 stalwarts that said enough is enough? No. It was only until almost the end of his term, and there was a real budget going on, that he finally said no. And frankly, that was a no too late. That was a politically oriented vote that said, okay, the election's coming up. That's what drove that vote. And by then it was too late, because 2 for 1, not happening. And I think that's what most of us in the grassroots are complaining about. If you're gonna go anywhere, if you're gonna get into office, it's easy. Just do as you say that you were gonna campaign on.
You know, it's interesting, and I've had this argument with many people. They say, oh, your politics are too liberal, they're too conservative, people want moderates. And I say, what people really want? They want honest people. And you know, and again, I hate to keep saying nice things about Carol Shea Porter, because I disagree with her politics on every level. But everybody goes, how does this such a moonbat liberal keep getting elected? And it's because she promises things to her people, and then she upholds the way that she's going to vote. And the thing is it doesn't matter how conservative you are or how liberal you are. A lot of people, especially independents, are just looking for honest people who say that they're going to vote away and do something a certain way, and then do it.
A lot of the things I've been writing about the last couple of months, not necessarily the last 2 weeks, where I've just kind of gotten off onto other things. 2 words: consistency and trust. We're seeing the internecine wars within the GOP that we started off with. And it really comes down to they're struggling. How do we reach more people? And I'm saying it's real easy. We should not be doing the identity politics pandering that the Democrats have got down cold. We can't be Father Christmas to their Santa Claus. It ain't gonna work. What a lot of people in the GOP are saying that are disaffected, and if you look at Frontier Labs' report, it's crystal clear. 2 words: consistency and trust. If you are consistent, you will be trusted. When you are trusted, you will get a vote. But right now, we're seeing no consistency from the GOP. Look at all the crowd of GOPers down in D.C. right now. We will do anything that we can to stop Obamacare. Except defund it. They've had, 40 gazillion votes to repeal it. Well, that's nice the first 3 times. Yeah, we get the idea, but we also know it's nothing more than a charade. Now you've got the chance to actually defund it. Are you going to be consistent to what you said and you campaigned to go there for?
Right.
Are you actually going to do it? Do you have the consistency on other things as well? And when we don't see that, or we see the 180 degrees around that, then you wonder why we don't trust you, and then you wonder why we don't vote for you. And that comes back to, what I said about Sarah Palin, Mark Levin, and Rush Limbaugh. Why should we vote for people or stay in a party and support a party that refuses to do what they say they're going to do and refuses to fight for us. And that's the key word, fight for our ideals and beliefs.
Well, we need to use the party, and I think there is some value to the Republican Party. One of the biggest is ballot access. And if you look actually what the Libertarians have done in moving here through the Free State Project, is they've used not just the Republicans' ballot access, but the Democrats' ballot access. So you actually have a Democrat who ran and got elected in Nashua, and one that ran and got elected here in my city of Manchester, as Democrats. And if you look at their voting record, they vote along with Republicans, 90% of the time. If you look at, their HLA rating, they're some of the highest ratings. And so I think that you can change the party from the inside, but there are times when you need to have a mechanism that's outside the party, whether it's starting up some kind of, 501c4, starting up a separate PAC that can support conservative candidates. But one of the biggest ways you can do it is really get involved in primaries. Is really, when you look at it, me and Andrew the other day were watching this video on corruption in politics, and what we were talking, when it's talking about corruption, what it's saying is that really, when you look at it, it's 0.05% of the population that actually determine elections, because those are the people who can fund primaries. And so if we really got behind some conservative candidates in primaries and force the Republican Party to say, hey, the whole slate of candidates that are running for the Republican Party this term are conservatives, what could the Republican Party do? It'd have to support them. And in some cases, the party is known to just walk away from candidates and not have their back. But at the end of the day, we can change the party from the inside. I still have hope that we can do that.
I would love to see that. I would love to see what the GOP would do if they had to back, say, a whole slate of Tea Party candidates.
Like Bob Burns.
Bob already answered the question for us.
We endorsed you too.
And I appreciate that, and I know that that was a point of contention for people, and I really
we were more hurtful than helpful.
No.
I heard that.
When I say no. When I say a point of contention, and I know that there was an internal struggle in particularly some organizations over backing me or one of my opponents during the primary, and I know that. A lot of people. I did not get the credit. I think that a lot of people said I was going to get 10%. That's what I'm trying to say. A lot of people weren't giving me the credit of being a legitimate candidate when I was running. The media wasn't giving it to me. A lot of other people weren't giving it to me. And so the people who did come out and endorse me, and ultimately I won, and the guy that everybody thought was going to get first place ultimately got third. I really appreciated it, and I thought that was a really big deal.
It did make a difference.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, it gave me more credibility. Absolutely.
By the way, just a quick plug. If anybody doesn't read Jeffrey Lord over at American Spectator, they should. He was there in the trenches of the Reagan Revolution. He's got the facts. He's got the facts on Reagan, the facts on Newt Gingrich, the facts on the 1995 government shutdown.
All right.
And why we should just shut the damn thing down.
Thanks for that. Bob, Dave, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us.
We'll see you.
GrokTV.